He walked away from a 14-year career in law enforcement, loaded his family into a tiny home on wheels, and drove toward 20 acres of raw mountain land in North Idaho with no construction experience, no plan B, and a mortgage he had just paid off. His name is Jeremy Souza, and the channel he and his wife Melissa built from that decision, Good Simple Living, now has over 546,000 subscribers and more than 142 million views. But by the time you finish watching this, you'll understand why the most important chapter of this story isn't the house they built. It's the house they had to tear down. He was a cop. That's the part people tend to forget when they find Good Simple Living for the first time. Most new viewers land on a video of Jeremy installing timber framing or Melissa harvesting from their garden, and they see a family that looks like they were always built for this life. The mountains, the animals, the self-sufficiency. But Jeremy Souza spent more than 14 years in law enforcement before any of that existed. He worked the job that comes with shift work, rotating schedules, and the kind of mental weight that follows you home. He had a pension forming on the horizon. He had a mortgage. He had a family of 6 depending on a paycheck that arrived every 2 weeks. The Souzas were living near Portland, Oregon at the time. Suburban life, car payments, a house in a neighborhood, kids in a system that Jeremy and Melissa had started to quietly question. Not loudly, not publicly, but the questions were building. Melissa has talked about the feeling they shared, that they were living a life that looked right from the outside, but didn't feel right from the inside. They were doing what you're supposed to do, work the job, save the money, stay in the lane. But both of them had grown up with some connection to simpler things: gardens, open land, faith, and those roots were pulling. The decision didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. They found land in North Idaho, 20 acres outside Bonners Ferry, a small town tucked against the Canadian border in the Panhandle. Rugged, remote, and exactly the kind of place where you either figure things out or you don't. They bought it with the specific intent to build their own home and never carry a mortgage on it again. That commitment to being debt-free wasn't a preference, it was a principle. Jeremy has repeated it in interviews and on camera more times than you can count. No debt, no compromise. If they couldn't build it themselves, they would wait until they could. And if you think the hardest part of that decision was leaving the career, stay with me, because the real cost of what they chose doesn't show up until much later in this story. April 2020 is when everything changed. Jeremy Souza walked away from his job as a police officer in what might be the most unusual timing imaginable. The country was shutting down. Nobody knew what was coming. The economy was in free fall. And Jeremy's plan was to quit law enforcement, move his family into a tiny home on wheels, and start building a house from scratch on raw mountain land. The video he posted about his last day on the job became one of the most watched pieces of content on the channel. It's called Emotional Goodbye, My Last Day as a Police Officer, and it has nearly 600,000 views. You can watch Jeremy in that video, the moment where it becomes real. He's not celebrating, he's processing. 14 years is a long time to walk away from, but here's what people miss about that video. It wasn't the starting gun. The YouTube channel had actually been live since 2010. The Souzas had been documenting small pieces of their homesteading interest and family life for years before the Idaho move, before any of it gained traction. Jeremy and Melissa have called themselves accidental YouTubers. They didn't sit down one day and decide to build an audience. They just started filming life and putting it online. What changed in 2020 wasn't the channel. What changed was Jeremy's willingness to bet everything on it. Quitting a stable, pensioned law enforcement career, voluntarily at 40-something, during a global crisis, is not a calculated YouTube growth strategy. It's a leap of faith. And faith is not a secondary theme for the Souzas. It is the primary one. Jeremy and Melissa are openly Christian, and their belief that they were being called toward a different kind of life runs through almost every video they've made. The channel grew because people believed them. That's the simplest explanation. In a space full of creators performing simplicity, the Souzas were actually doing it. No professional contractors, no outside financing, just 2 people with 5 kids, some tools, and a mountain. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. What Jeremy and Melissa built on that North Idaho property over the next several years is genuinely difficult to describe without watching the footage. They arrived with no prior construction experience and started working. The structure that eventually emerged was a barnominium-style home, a large, steel-framed building with a concrete floor, hand-finished interiors, and enough space for 7 people to live in. The channel documented all of it. Every poured foundation, every wall framed, every mistake made and problem solved. That transparency is important because it's the thing that separates good, simple living from the polished homesteading content that floods YouTube. Jeremy doesn't edit out the days things go wrong. He built a framework from scratch that wasn't exactly square. He put up walls that had to come back down. Melissa filmed moments when the family was exhausted, when the money was tighter than expected, when the project felt bigger than anything 2 people without a construction background should be attempting. The audience responded to that honesty in numbers that nobody predicted. The channel passed 100,000 subscribers, then 200,000, then 300,000. By 2024 and into 2025, Good Simple Living was sitting at over 500,000 subscribers, with videos regularly pulling 6-figure view counts within days of posting. The channel also began diversifying. Jeremy and Melissa launched a podcast called New World Old Soul, an extension of the faith-centered philosophy that had driven every decision since they left Oregon. The podcast allowed them to go deeper on the conversations that a 20-minute YouTube video couldn't fully contain. Philosophy, spirituality, what it means to deliberately step away from a consumer-driven life. They added livestock, chickens, horses, gardens large enough to produce meaningful food for a family of 7. The land was becoming what they had moved there to build. And then, quietly, in late 2025, something shifted. And if you think the construction setbacks were the biggest challenge this family faced, you haven't gotten to the part that stopped the channel cold for a different reason entirely. In October of 2025, Melissa Souza told her audience something she had been sitting with privately. She had noticed symptoms, things that didn't feel right. She went to see a doctor. What came back required more testing. The video she and Jeremy posted in October, titled, "I'm Sick, You Were Right," an unexpected diagnosis, pulled 359,000 views. For a channel that regularly performs well, that number stands out. The audience cared about her answer. Melissa received a diagnosis related to her thyroid. The details that followed played out across multiple videos over the next several weeks. A biopsy. Waiting for results. Another biopsy. More waiting. In November of 2025, Jeremy posted a video called My Wife's Biopsy Result and followed it with another update just days later. The results, ultimately, were not the worst outcome, but the journey to get there, filmed and shared with 500,000 people, revealed something about the Souza channel that isn't fully apparent when you're just watching the build content. This family doesn't separate the hard parts from the highlight reel. They document the fear alongside the progress. Jeremy has said on camera that the channel is a record of their life, not a performance of it. Melissa's health scare was part of the life, so it went on the channel. The audience responded in a way that underscored how real the connection is between this family and the people who follow them. The comment sections during that period looked different from the typical homesteading video. People were praying. People were crying. People were sharing their own experiences with similar diagnoses. There is also a practical angle to this story that rarely gets discussed. Melissa's health challenges, which have appeared at multiple points in the channel's history, represent a real vulnerability for a family that has deliberately built a life outside the traditional safety net. No employer health plan, no institutional backup. The Souzas made that trade consciously, but it doesn't make the stakes smaller when something goes wrong. Most people following this story walked away when the medical news started to clear. What they missed is the reason they should have stayed, because while Melissa was recovering, Jeremy was discovering something about the house they had spent years building that changed everything they thought they had accomplished. This is the part of the story that even longtime subscribers didn't fully see coming. In late 2025 and into early 2026, Jeremy began sharing updates about the original structure, the barnominium they had spent years building, the home that had become the centerpiece of the entire channel. What he found wasn't something a renovation could fix. There was mold, structural problems that had developed beneath the surface, invisible in the videos because they were literally inside the walls. In June of 2026, he posted a video called "We're Going to Demolish and Rebuild the Home You Watched Us Build" online. That title alone captures the scope of what the Souzas were facing. Not a repair, not a patch. A full demolition of the home that had made them famous, followed by a new build from the ground up. The follow-up video, posted in July 2026, showed the demolition beginning. Its title was blunt, an emotional demo. Mold, injuries, plus a fire breaks out. A fire. During demolition, the Souzas managed it. but it underscored the degree to which this phase of their story was not going according to any plan. What makes this moment so significant isn't just the practical loss of thousands of hours of labor. It's what it says about the philosophy behind the channel. Jeremy and Melissa built that home as a statement that you could create something meaningful and lasting without debt, without contractors, without the conventional path. Now they were watching it come down with excavation equipment. Jeremy addressed that directly on camera. The framing he gave was consistent with everything the channel has always been. This is not a failure, it is information. They learned what they did wrong. They will build again, better. The debt-free principle remains. The land is still theirs. But here's what the comments kept asking. And here's the answer they never got, until now. Between November 2025 and February 2026, Good Simple Living posted a series of videos that reframed what the channel's future looked like. In February 2026, a video called Our Family is Leaving Idaho, The Long Road Back to Hawaii, became one of the most watched posts in the channel's recent history, pulling 346,000 views. Jeremy and Melissa had visited Hawaii. More than visited, they had seriously considered whether North Idaho was still where they were meant to be. The mountain life, the isolation, the winters, whether the pull towards something different was worth listening to. The video didn't announce a permanent move. It was exploratory, honest in the way the channel always is. But the fact that the family who had built an entire identity around their Idaho land was publicly questioning that choice, that hit the audience differently than a typical life update. Around the same time, a video arrived that the comment section received with a wave of emotion. He's gone. It's not what we wanted, but it's what is best. The title refers to one of the Souza children, their oldest son, who had been featured across years of channel content, leaving the family home. Jeremy and Melissa were transparent that this was his next chapter, not a crisis. But the loss of presence, the change in the family dynamic, was clearly felt. And there was something else in that same window. The Souzas did something in December 2025 that their audience almost certainly didn't predict when they first found the channel. They raised and delivered over $260,000 in donations for the Childhood Cancer Coalition, which supports families battling pediatric cancer across North Idaho, eastern Washington, and western Montana. It was not a one-time effort. This was their 5th consecutive year running the fundraiser, and 2025 was the biggest year yet. That detail matters because it points toward who Jeremy and Melissa Souza actually are, beneath the build content. The house, the homestead, the YouTube channel, those are the vehicle. What they're driving toward is something they've described consistently as a life of purpose and generosity, not just self-sufficiency. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me because this next part is why the whole story matters. In March of 2026, Jeremy posted a video called Starting a New Build from the Ground Up. It had no announcement, no fanfare about the new chapter or the restart. It just began. By May, they were back. The new build was underway. A video called We're Starting a New Build for the Future Generation to Come spelled out something Jeremy had been circling around for months. The next structure isn't just for them. It's designed as a multi-generational home, a place for the family to use and pass down. The Idaho land, despite everything, is not being abandoned. The latest videos as of summer 2026 show the demolition of the original structure proceeding, the new build breaking ground, and a family that has absorbed a remarkable amount of disruption without changing direction. By July 2026, breaking ground, our new home build starts now. The channel was filming fresh concrete, a new foundation, new walls going up. The channel is doing something during this phase that it couldn't have done in 2020. It's demonstrating what happens after the dream gets tested, after the health scare, after the son leaves, after the house you built has to come down, after you seriously ask whether you made the right choice and sit with that question publicly in front of 500,000 people who also want to know the answer. Jeremy Souza did not walk away from a 14-year law enforcement career to have a YouTube channel. He walked away to build a different kind of life. The channel is the record of that attempt. The wins, the structural failures, the medical fears, the faith, the demolitions, and now the second attempt at the same thing. The difference this time is that he knows what the walls are hiding. What makes Jeremy Souza's story worth understanding isn't the size of the house or the number of subscribers. It's the consistency between what he said he was going to do and what he has actually done, even when doing it required tearing down the evidence that he'd already done it once. The rebuild is underway in North Idaho. The new structure is designed to last longer and serve more people than the first one. The podcast continues. The cancer fundraiser will likely return in 2025. Melissa's health, by all confirmed accounts, stabilized after the thyroid scare. And the audience, 500,000 people, is still watching because the Souzas have never given them a reason to look away. Here's the question worth sitting with. If you had spent 6 years building something with your own hands and discovered it had to come down, would you have the capacity to start over, in public, on camera, with the same conviction you started with the first time? Because Jeremy did. Drop a comment and tell me whether you think starting over from scratch made him stronger, or whether you think there's a point where you would have walked away.